Why Made in China is becoming Made in Mexico. Let's start off by talking about some of the main factors driving this phenomenon. The COVID 19 pandemic causes major disruptions in the global supply chain. The pandemic specifically hurt the Chinese economy in a few different ways. The pandemic began in China, rendering many workers unable to work. Having so many workers sick and unable to work caused production in factories to slow down. Aside from the factory production, shipping was also disrupted. By the COVID 19 pandemic, many ships were stuck at sea and unable to unload due to port workers becoming ill. With the ships being stuck at sea and severe delays, it caused the American market to cause shortages. Another factor influencing why China is becoming made in Mexico is the trade war. One thing that President Trump initiated when he took office was imposing tariffs on Chinese made goods. These tariffs made it more expensive to purchase Chinese goods. The Manhua story shows a Chinese company's perspective on why Made in China is becoming Made in Mexico. Manhua is a Chinese factory that makes lazy boys, reclining sofas, mattresses. When the trade war began, the Manhua factory opened factories in new locations outside of China. These new locations allowed Manhua to avoid paying the tariffs as their goods was no longer produced in China. Like many companies, Manhua was also affected by the shipping problems caused by COVID-19 pandemic as their new factory locations were on the wrong side of the Pacific Ocean. Manhua realized that a solution to the shipping difficulties caused by the pandemic and to avoid tariffs placed on Chinese products was to open a factory in Mexico. Opening a Manhua factory in Mexico allowed them to reach their largest market, which is America, via land transport through Laredo, Texas. Operating in Mexico allowed Manhua severely cheap similar cheap labor as compared to the factories in China. Even though the labor was slightly more expensive, the savings on transport costs made the difference insignificant. With the changes from the COVID 19 pandemic and tariffs, Chinese companies now face new challenges. If Chinese companies remain in China, they'll have to pay higher shipping prices because of the tariffs. If they it is also remains a possibility that the companies in China may not be able to ship their products to the largest markets such as the US. If a Chinese company decides to move out of China, they are also still stuck with the challenges of higher cost of labor, local supply chains, and the availability of labor. Chinese companies operating inside China are used to abundant supply of workers. If they were to move outside of China to somewhere with low unemployment, to supply of workers would not be what they're accustomed to. The supply chain in China is unlike anything else on earth. Companies may have difficulties obtaining the materials needed to make their products in other countries. China is also known for their cheap labor. Employees in other countries may expect higher wages and better treatment. So, will China remain the dominant manufacturer? As I stated earlier, China has many advantages as a manufacturer not seen in other parts of the world. China has an abundance of cheap labor and a immersive supply chain. China has the ability to make a wide diversity of products from start to finish without having to import components of products. It is for these reasons I believe that China will remain the dominant manufacturer for the foreseeable future. The debate on globalization is one that seems to be exaggerated. The anti globalization movement began in 1999. Protesters for the anti globalization believe that globalization led to decline in living standards, wages, and the environment. I believe that the globalization movement is a positive move for societies across the world. Globalization allows companies to reduce their cost structure, which in turn benefits the consumer. Free trade amongst countries also leads to less labor exploitation. For these reasons, I believe that globalization will help those around the globe build a better future.